So hello, today I'm at All Saints Church in Writtle in Essex, and I'd like to talk to you a bit about the village and the church itself. So it is a very windy day, so I hope you can hear me okay. So Writtle is 1 mile from Chelmsford in Essex. Today the population is around 5,000. The landscape is fairly flat and rural, and the rivers Wid and Cam pass close by. The town's name derives from Rid, which in Celtic is a meaning of ford or river crossing, and in Saxon times it was Rito Laburn, meaning purling stream, so again it's connected to the river. Now Emperor Claudius marched the 9th Legion here in AD 43, or at least close by here, with 20,000 legionnaires, and they camped in Molsham Street in nearby Chelmsford, and the Roman settlement was established here soon after. There's also Lawford Lane, which has got a bridge which crosses the River Cam, and originally this was a Roman crossing point. Now in Saxon times, Writtle was the biggest settlement, 52 miles in circumference, and making it the largest in Essex. Now the area of Writtle today consists of village green with the duck pond, various pubs, and surrounded by dwellings, and of course you've got All Saints Church. But in Saxon times there is evidence to show that there was a ditch that ran around the area making a burh, and approximately 500 metres square area would be inside this burh. One side of the burh runs not far from the church that we're looking at today. Now I'm going to put this onto the gate here. So Edward the Elder, son of Alfred the Great, he marched his army up the Ongar Road, not far from here, and it's likely that he camped here in the Writtle Burh before marching to Malden to fortify the town in 912. Now it's probable that Writtle was a royal settlement which protected the road to London from the Danish Vikings who held Colchester at the time. Prior to the Norman invasion, there were 9 manors here, and Harold Godwinson owned Writtle Manor. Godwine was the deacon, and Saywine was the priest. And it's likely that there was a Saxon church here where All Saints stand today. So in 1086, William the Conqueror was tenant-in-chief and lord of the manor, was Count of Stacer-Boulogne. Hello.
Hello there.
You alright?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Oh, just a video for YouTube.
Oh.
On the history. Thank you.
Okay.
So he was Count of Stacer-Boulogne, and the bishop was Robert of Hereford. So in the winter, the Cam River in Chelmsford is impassable. Well, it was at the time. Hello. So until 1101, a stone bridge was built. From that time, Writtle could have been bypassed to a degree. Now the church that's in front of us, All Saints, was built, well, in 1143, was given to the Bermondsey Priory, along with its revenues, by King Stephen. And in 1204, King John granted All Saints Church and all its revenues to the Hospital of the Holy Ghost, which is St Mary's in Rome in Italy. So there's a strong connection there. Now Pope Innocent III, he held negotiations for visiting English pilgrims, and at that time All Saints had 2 priests who were paid to pray for the king and his predecessors' souls. And they earned 4p a day, and they were allowed to take wood from the king's forest and nuts off the ground as long as the season lasted. Now also there was a hermitage which was called Abbeylands or Beedmansburg, and it was 4 miles from this church, and that was established in the same time as King Stephen by a monk called Robert, and it passed on to the monks of St John in Colchester. Now around 1211 King John, he had a royal palace here in Writtle, and it was around about where Writtle College or Writtle University College stands today. Now also he had a hunting ground here and a lodge, and the area is still known as King John's Palace. Now we go on to Robert the Bruce, or Robert D. Bruce. Just going to take some shield outside the wind here. I'll go around here, might get that out of the wind. So Robert D. Bruce was 6th Lord of Armandale in Scotland, and he owned Writtle and was a cross-border lord. And it's likely he was born here in Writtle in 1243. Now his son, Robert the Bruce, inherited Writtle Manor. His birth location is unknown, but probably Turnberry Castle in Scotland. But could he have been born here in 1274? You just don't know. Now when Robert became King of Scotland in 1306, all of his lands and titles were forfeited to the crown, including Writtle, and were granted to Humphrey de Bohun. Humphrey de Bohun was the Earl of Essex and Constable of England. And this was all carried out by Edward II. Now in 1347 Humphrey had licensed by the King Henry III to fortify and embattle his mansion house in Writtle at nearby Lordship Farm. Also this area had court baron meetings, so you can get an idea of just the prestige and the power of the people that were in this area. Now when we think of being a lord, we think of you know, the quality of life and the esteem with it, but owning a manor was not always, or being a lord was not always a bed of roses. Now I'm going to give you some examples of how things can drastically go wrong. Edmund, Earl of Stafford, was Lord of Writtle Manor, and he was slain in battle at Shrewsbury in 1403. His son was only 2, so his wife remarried John, Earl of Huntingdon, and he fell in battle fighting for Henry VI at Northampton in 1460. Now his son was Humphrey, and he also died in battle 5 years previously at St Albans. And the manor was passed on to his grandson Henry. And guess what? He was beheaded in 1460 for going against Richard III. Now Edward's eldest son obtained his father's estates, including Writtle, and you guessed it, he was beheaded on Tower Hill at the Tower of London in 1521. Now he had offended King Henry VIII's right-hand man, Cardinal Wolsey, and so the estates returned to the crown once more. Now Queen Mary, she was the last monarch to own Writtle, or the crown was, and she granted the lordship to Sir William Petre. He was educated as a lawyer, and William he sidestepped the religious controversies of the day, and he served as Secretary of State. Now he held office throughout the reigns of Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary I and Elizabeth I, and his son John Peter became first Baron of Writtle in 1603. Now earlier I talked about the village having a green. Well, originally there were two, and the residents would pay a green silver tax, and it would be £0.5 a year for looking out of the green. Now I wanted to bring this other guy up, which I think's worth mentioning. In 1633, so we're going to walk under this avenue of yew trees, and by the way, this church is unusual because it's got 29 of them, various ages. So in 1633 we have a John Bastwick, and he was born in Writtle, and he wrote against the abuses of the Catholic Church, and for this he was fined £1,000 and he was excommunicated, and he was prohibited from practicing. His books were burnt, and he was to remain in prison until he recanted. Well, Dr. John did not recant. He wrote a further book titled The Titany, and it was against the court that sentenced him. And the fine was increased to £5,000, and he was pilloryed, which is a form of stocks, public humiliation. And he was also to have his ears cut off and finally be sent to a prison in a remote part of the kingdom. Now in 1640, Parliament reversed the proceedings, paying £5,000 in compensation. But I'm afraid John Bastwick, he never received the payment. As a consolation, if you can call it that, in 1644, his wife received a maintenance allowance. So we've gone into great detail of the people that made up Writtle in the very early period. Now we're going to look at the church itself, and you can see the sheer wealth and the position of these people have created a very large church indeed. So we're going to start off with the West Tower. Now the West Tower was originally built in the 14th century, and at the time, well after that, it had 5 bells and a steeple, and they know this because there is a painting that shows this from previous centuries. So we go over to it. Now, as with most of this church, it's built of ragstone rubble. And you have flint dressings, random rubble and flint, and then you've got sandstone dressings. But this tower itself has had a bit of a disaster throughout the period. So if you can look at it, you can see as it is today, with a fair amount of brickwork, a fantastic door there. I'll go around to the sunny side, be better. So, on the 4th of April 1800, the tower collapsed, and it's said to have come down with such a tremendous crash it levelled a nearby cottage. Now this tower was rebuilt in 1802 on the existing foundations, so some point along here would be the original foundations. These walls are 6 foot thick and this tower is 19 foot square, so it's a fair size. Now if we go back round to the north side, you can see a clock. Now this clock was installed in 1881 and it was paid for by Henry Hardcastle, and he was the owner of Writtle Brewery. You can see it there. Now we're going to go into the porch. Now the porch, or the north porch, it was built in 1350. It's had renovation over the years, as you expect. It's got the original walls, but inside it's got modern arches and windows. So we're going to go in. There you can see the modern beams. Now we're going to enter this door here. It's a fairly modern door. The good thing in this church, they try and keep it open as much as possible. A lovely old clunk. So now we're into the north aisle, and the first thing you notice are various headstones that are embedded into the floor from various centuries. The north aisle was built around 1350. It's 10.5 feet wide, and it has a 16th century archway at the other end. Now I'd like to point this out here. So this plaque is to remember Robert Little, who crashed in a Wellington bomber in the days before the war started, or World War II, in 1939. Now we're going to move up towards the east end, and you pass over various headstones. Now this one is really significant. It's a really large floor slab. Now this is the Hevingham brass, and they're the same family. And if you look on the left hand side, first person is Thomasina of 1513. This is believed to be a father, Thomas. This is a grandfather, Thomas, and this is the grandmother, Thomasina. And what makes this unusual is that the two men are on the inside. If you look, the men are dressed in early Tudor armour. Hello. So I'm just making a video. And the ladies are dressed in pedimental headdress with low cut long sleeves. Now if you look, the family crest there. Now a lot of these family crests were removed during the time of Oliver Cromwell, and the Hevingham family themselves would have pulled this out This brass is unusual because it's of a lady that never had any children. Looks like all got married. Now, if we look over here, this alcove, which is quite small, is St Leonard Chapel, and it was built between two buttresses, and it used to have a statue of St Leonard inside. The actual stained glass window is from 1906. Now underneath here, you can just about see that. You can see one person there. This is believed to be William Pychon, and he was born in Writtle in 1560 and he died in 1592. And William's brass would have laid here. Now he married Rose Redding in this church at All Saints in 1578, and that is Rose there. It's incredible to think. Now only the brass of Rose and the 6 sons remain, which I can't see on there. And says the missing 3 daughters and a shield of arms and foot legend are missing. Now the Pychon family lived in Writtle for generations, and Nicholas Pychon was Lord Mayor of London in 1532. And John Pychon was born in Writtle and inherited land in Springfield, Chelmsford in 1573. Now John had a son called William, and he emigrated to America. And by 1632, William had become a trader of furs and goods with the Agawan Indians, and he was much respected. By 1639, William had become the first magistrate of the area, and he changed the town's name to Springfield in Massachusetts. His son became the biggest landowner in Springfield, and William Pychon, excuse me if I'm getting that pronunciation wrong, he returned to England. He ended his years in theological studies and writing, and he passed away aged 72, who's a fair age, in Buckinghamshire in 1662. So there's a strong connection there. Now these pews are poppy pews, and they're believed to have been from the 15th or 16th century, and you can see the wear there. Quite incredible. They're dotted around this church. Now we're going to move on to the nave. Now the nave is vast in proportions. It's built in 1230, and it's 70 feet by 23 feet. And if you look, it's got 5 bays, like so, on either side. And if you look at these benches, there are 44 of these, and they're made from kauri wood. Now this comes from New Zealand. See ya.
Yeah,
Bye.
what interesting. Did you see how they spelled died?
Yes, I have seen that. Yes, I like the spelling. I like the spelling of died in the old days. It's fascinating. Bye. So this wood comes from New Zealand, and it comes from the North Island. And these trees would stand at 50 metres, incredible height. And the age of a kauri tree could be ranging from 600 to 1,000 years old. And I think there is one tree that's over 2,000 years. So you could say that these benches or the wood is at least as old as this church. Possibly. The Maori would actually make giant canoes out of a single tree, and they could hold up to 180 warriors. Now, all these benches were installed under a major renovation by the Reverend Andrew Stackpole. Now I'm just going to go over to this memorial on the wall. This is really of interest. So Jack Sparrow, he was a butcher's son from this area, and he went on to become a missionary in Borneo between 1931 and 1948. And Writtle parish, they adopted a pupil from the missionary in Borneo, who returned to become Borneo's first black bishop. First country's bishop. It's amazing. Now if we go over to here, the beam, you can barely see it. I'll try and zoom as best I can. You can see the writing on there. So this this beam was carved in 1740 under more renovations, and it's got the names of 2 wardens and the carpenter. Now we're going to go on to the south aisle. Now the south aisle was built in 1350. Just want to pass this lovely old chest. Look at that. Is that incredible? Seriously old. So now we're in the south aisle. If we look down, built in 1350, it's 10.5 feet wide. Again, it's got a 16th century archway at the other end and 16th century windows, which you can see here. Well, not so much the glass, it's the actual stonework, mullions. Again, beautiful. Now, this column here, or pier, I think they call it technically, it's one of the oldest. At the base, this part here is possibly Saxon, and it's using Roman bricks. So those bricks would be from the 1st to 4th century. Now, this font, incredibly old, it's said to be from 1170, a very early Norman, but it could well be a Roman font. It is made of canned stone, which is from France, and if you can see how incredibly detailed it would have been originally, with all the lines cut into there, it has been outside, and that's why it's weathered. It's possible that Robert D. Bruce was baptised in it. Now we go on to the rood stairs. Which you can see the opening up there. And if you just take get the idea. But the rood stairs would have exited that where that column is and that arch. Originally, there would have been a sort of balcony that would have ran across the whole of the nave. So if I stand back a bit, you get an idea of the scale of it. And this would have been to accommodate musicians and a choir. This was removed and destroyed during the English Reformation. Now, this is the Carpenter's Chapel on the south side, and it was named after William Carpenter, the village priest. It dates from the 16th century, and it's made of Tudor brick. This lovely window where the sun is shining through. You can see the detail. This was installed in 1870 by the Newcastle children who owned Writtle Brewery in memory of their mother. So again, in connection with the clock, this family have a lot to do with this lovely old church. Now, we're going to go into the Nicholas or South Chapel. It's got various names. I think it might have been connected at one period with the Lord Peters, or the Peter family. This is 14th century, or at least it's designated to Lord Peter. So it's 25 feet by 11 feet, and it's got the most recent of all the stained glass windows. Now I'm going to set this up on the table. See if I can zoom up in there a bit. There. Bit tricky, but this is this window is it was designed to commemorate Guglielmo Marconi and Beryl Platt. And Marconi was from Bologna in Italy and the inventor of wireless telephony, whatever it's called. He arrived in Britain in 1896 and he basically established the world's first wireless factory in Chelmsford, and his technology was used on the Titanic, which saved 700 lives. Marconi insisted that all these wireless sets would have to be accompanied by one of his operators, and he would charge 5 pence per word. So he made a fair bit of money. So on Monday, it was 100 years to the day that the world's first regular wireless broadcast took place in a hut named 2MT, not far from this church. And a piano would be wheeled from a nearby pub every Tuesday and played for half an hour, along with gramophone records. Now, that, if you look on the Marconi's side is the right side, and you can see the electrical sign there. And on the other side, with a wheel, this is designated to Beryl Platt. Now, Beryl's life and achievements during World War II, she worked as an aviation engineer. She worked on the Hurricane, the Typhoon and the Tempest fighter planes. In the 1950s, Beryl designed procedures for safe landings of aircraft if an engine failure occurred, so we owe her a lot. She was famous for carrying electrical screwdrivers around in a handbag. She was literally an engineer for life. In politics, she became Baroness Platt of Writtle when she joined the House of Lords in Westminster in 1981. Fascinating. Now, so we've got a lot of connection with engineers here. Now we're going to enter the chancel. This is 41 by 18 feet, and it's again built in 1230. It's a beautiful part of the building. This east window here is modern. That door, that beautiful oak door, is studded and ribbed door. That is a 14th century door. That goes to the vestry. Now, I did some research on this part of the building, and it's possible, because I think some of these walls they bow in slightly. It's possible that originally the original wall would have been circular, or half semicircular, and that would have been called an apse. Now, in the medieval times, only the priests and assistants were allowed in this area, the chancel, and this is why you have the rood screen, etc., blocking it all off. Now we're going to into what is the North Chapel. This is 14th century, and it's 24 by 13 feet. And what is famous for this church is the 40 slabs that run all the way through. You can see all the way through. It's incredible. Now I'd like to point out a few of these. Now the oldest slab is actually in front of us right now. I'm going to put my light on. There. This belongs to the, can you see that okay? The Bedell family, 1500. And John Bedell owned Bedell's Hall, which is 4 miles from here. And if you look at his armour, he's wearing early War of the Roses armour. There's his wife. His wife is wearing a long gown and girdie. You can see that there. Now, if we move down to the base, actually I'll turn my light off. You can probably see it better. This shows the children. So there's 6 boys, and over here we've got 2 girls. Now, the Bedells held Bedell's Hall from 1360, and William Bedell was trustee of Writtle almshouses, which are built not far from here. Now, if we look at this, this is a magnificent. I'm going to put my torch on for this one. This is spectacular. It shows a husband with 4 wives, and if you go beneath each wife, you can see how many children each wife had. So here, so this lady had 6 children, and you can see by the headdress they were male or female. And this lady, she was barren, she had no children. It's a terrible term, isn't it, barren? And if you look at this lady here, she had 1 son and 5 daughters. And this lady here, she had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sons, 2 daughters. And if we go on to this one, you can see the detail. Very Tudor looking, or Elizabethan, I would say. Elizabethan period costume or clothing. 1609. This was Edward Boland, gentleman who departed 1609. And if we go on to this one, another fantastic one, which I've done no research into this. Back in the day, people would come here and they would do brass robins. It's very popular in the 1970s, but it goes right back to 19th century. It's very popular. So this brass, 1576, and again, if you look at the base, 3 children. There's another little brass thing there. There's so much to look at. So here we have one of these poppy pews. You can just see the age of it. It's incredible. So I shall finish up now by going outside and just walking around the church as I normally do. Well worth a visit, Writtle in itself, just because it's such an interesting little village. This church has got a very strong community that's attached to this church, so there's a lot of events going on here. The church itself carries out the usual baptisms and the weddings and the funerals. You can see there they've put it in the wall. But they also carry out bell ringing duties, and they welcome visitors who want to have a go, or people who want to start up a new hobby. And they also carry out handbell ringing, which is quite interesting. You can see just how they incorporate bits of old masonry into the fabric. Now this doorway is blocked up now, but you can see how they've incorporated a flint crucifix into the fabric. Now I've got a feeling that a lot of black flint was brought over in the 100 Years' War. So this is the Tudor building from the outside. I found this quite interesting. I'm not exactly sure what's going on here. Something from the past. This, which I couldn't work out first, this is the rood stairwell. You can see how they've incorporated it into the structure at some point. And also this chapel here would have had a doorway here, or a window. And at one period, this was the original opening, which you can see above has been blocked up. Inside as an alcove, but I think the doorway was here. So this would be the original point of access. Oh, almost went over then, it's slippery. Right, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.